This conference will now be recorded.
Perfect timing. Okay, we're going to open the meeting up with a roll call vote. We're going to start with John Ketchum,
John Ketchum, present.
Elizabeth Harder,
Here.
Mary Maslowski. I'm going to pronounce your name right sooner or later, Mary.
Yeah, Maslowski here.
Kathy Green,
Kathy Green here.
Donna Kelnick,
Donna Kalanick here.
David Nixon here. Okay, Jan, would you take the honors in reading the governor's?
Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, GLC 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Town of Harwich Community Preservation Committee on Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021 at 6 p.m. will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend the meeting can be found on the Town of Harwich website at www.harwich-ma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner: on Channel 18 or by watching the simulcast at http://harwich18.dyn.org/cablecast/public/live.aspx ? Channel ID = 1. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite our best efforts, we will post on the Town of Harwich's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. The end. You're mute. Oh.
Is there any public comment, please? Hearing none, we're going to move on. Under new business, a discussion with the town administrator, Joe Powers, and I'm also going to combine that with the discussion I had with KP Law. So we sat down with the town administrator and the attorney from KP Law, John Giorgio. We went over some items. The first thing is, are there any updates from KP Law, Joe?
There are, Mr. Chairman, and I just want to emphasize that the articles have been reviewed completely for CPC. I was able to share those with you late today, and council provided background information that I'm prepared to read tonight if you'd like. That information was not received until today, so I wasn't able to distribute that widely, but I do have information from council.
You have the floor, Joe.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to go through the points that council has made. Again, this is relative to CPC articles. All of the articles that the Community Preservation has endorsed have been vetted and are in the draft that I shared earlier today. That is also in the draft that the Board of Selectmen will be reviewing Wednesday, March 24th at their meeting at 6:30. First, with regard to the article that relates to the Veterans Facility in Dennis, council's opinion is as follows. The town may fund a project located in another town using CPA funds as long as the project will provide opportunities for residents of Harwich to receive services. The way to ensure this is to have a grant agreement in place prior to the release of the funds that provides that Harwich residents who are veterans will be eligible for services at the Dennis facility. Would you like me to continue on or take any questions, Mr. Chairman?
Let's take questions on that particular issue.
Thank you.
I'll open up to the board. John Ketchum.
No questions, thank you.
Mary Maslowski.
No questions for me, thank you.
Thank you. Donna?
Just my specific question to KB Law was whether or not the deed restriction that will be held by the town of Dennis is sufficient in this case.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead, Joe.
So the chairman did bring that question to council's attention. Council indicated that they were the ones that wrote that for the town of Dennis and did feel that it was sufficient as requested.
Thank you, Joe. Donna, all set? Kathy?
All set.
Elizabeth?
I'm good.
Thank you. Go ahead, Joe, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Relative to the article that relates to the East Harwich Methodist Church Cemetery, council has indicated they are still evaluating the title information. If it is determined that the cemetery is owned by the church, it is council's opinion that the town may use CPA funds to restore gravestones. So again, if it is determined that the cemetery is still owned by the church, council's opinion is that the town may use funds to restore gravestones. They indicate that because the funds will not be used to promote or enhance the practice of religion, which would potentially pose an issue under the Anti-Aid Amendment as interpreted by the Supreme Judicial Court in Kaplan versus Town of Acton. In this instance, the funds will be used solely to beautify and enhance an important historic resource, i.e. the cemetery, without entangling the town in the practice of religion. As council has indicated, if they determine that the cemetery is owned by the church, they will create a grant agreement that ensures that the funds are spent for a valid public purpose. And then further, Mr. Chairman, I would just add anecdotally, council indicated that if it comes back that the church is owned by the town, there are no such issues. Either way, council feels confident that this article can go forward as presented.
Thank you, Joe. I'm going to open it up to the floor. Kathy?
I mean, I think our only question was one of liability. Right?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, so what is the liability if someone from the town gets injured on the property and it's owned by the church? Does the town have any problems?
That's when the attorney talked about a licensing agreement to putting people on the property. There would be some kind of a license agreement with the town?
Correct. And my understanding is council has amended that to go with the grant agreement. And so generally speaking, if we're talking about if the town has authorized, if we've gone out and procured the services to be rendered, is that where the question's getting to?
Yes.
So, in our due diligence, we would work with Maya, the town's insurance company, to make sure that all the insurances and liability protections are in place generally. Meaning not to minimize it, but I would view this a little differently than any other instance where we have work that's being done in cooperation with third parties. If it's the comfort of the committee to go back to council, I certainly can with that specific question. But generally speaking, I think council's taking comfort in the grant agreement and the procurement process.
Elizabeth?
If the grant agreement will take care of any town liability, then I'm okay with it.
Okay, and Elizabeth, there's something else we're going to discuss, but we're not going to discuss it at this point because of time. The grant agreements, we are going to get into that with council, and I will pass that information on at our next meeting. So, who do I have left? Mary, Elizabeth, Donna, Mary.
So my only comment is I would suspect whatever council decides is going to be determined by what their title review turns up. So I am fine with council's answer because I think they will tailor it once they finish their title review, and that will determine what goes into the grant agreement or what goes into insurance coverages. So thanks for following up with them.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, in relation to that, council also talked about the motion process. And Mr. Chairman, I know you and I have talked about it generally, but this year I'm ensuring that you'll be represented, Mr. Chairman, at the motions meeting. We'll be going through that, I believe, 2 weeks prior to town meeting. So we'll be able to get into more detail if the motions are required to add some solidification, if I can use that word, to this issue.
Okay, thank you, Joe. John Ketchum.
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Joe. Is there anything else you want to,
There were 2 more points that council made. Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. I believe
No,
our
I
members.
didn't, you didn't go to me,
I'm
David.
sorry, Donna, my
That's
apologies. Go
okay,
ahead.
it's no problem. Just clarification, did council opine on whether or not the cemetery commission was the appropriate entity to put the application in? Because, you know, it's a little strange. The cemetery commission's putting the application in, but the grant and license agreement will be with the property owner.
So the council did not give commentary that I can refer to tonight. But
That's
in
right.
talking about it last week, what council said was he intimated from this that the cemetery administrator was acting under her belief, which she has continued to show evidence that's being vetted, that the property and area in question is owned by the town. So he didn't have an issue per se with the application process. He focused more, like I said, on the end result, where if it is that the church owns it, the grant agreement will be structured in such a way to protect the town. And if it turns out, as cemetery administrator has been arguing all along, that the town owns it, he didn't see an issue with that generally.
And I understood that to be jointly done. So whether it was the town or the cemetery commission and the church. Well, the cemetery commission is the town, isn't it?
An adjunct therein, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess maybe once council is opined on who actually owns this, because I think the church thinks they own it, that, you know, this would be relevant to the application that we did not fund this year, and that likely will come back next year. And that's, again, why I think it's so important to do this upfront versus after the fact on these applications.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, in talking with council today, the working premise that council has right now is that they believe it will be determined that it is town property. They're just trying to vet that more seriously, but the initial presentment of information leads them to believe at present that it is town property, but they're not concluded with the process overall.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Did I hit all the board members? Joe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 more quick items with regard to the article regarding Hinckley's Pond. Council indicated that they substantially revised the article to authorize the acquisition of the parcels in question, as well as appropriating CPA funds for the purchase. I can speak more directly to that if you or your committee have questions on that, Mr. Chairman.
I do myself, would you please?
Sure. So council had inquired that with regard to Hinckley's Pond, what was the net effect of everything that was going on? I explained to council that the original application was a joint effort between real estate and open space in concert with Harwich Conservation Trust. The ask for the CPA funds is for the town through the Board of Selectmen to acquire certain parcels, recognizing that other parcels will be purchased by other agencies. And so that's why they've made the revisions that they have to the article. And Mr. Chairman, if it's helpful, I can queue that up to show that to the board. I know you're under a tight time frame, but I do have the updated language if the board wants to review it.
Joe, would you send that to my CPC address and I'll forward it to the board?
Certainly. So again, Mr. Chairman, you already have it. I can separate it out if you want, but it is Article 30, Article 30 in the current draft that's going to be reviewed by the selectmen tomorrow night.
Okay, I hope I have the technology to send this entire. Okay. All right, thank you, Joe. If I have any questions, I'll get back to you. And
Thank
we
you.
can have to work it out. Mary?
Just one question, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Powers. Are the changes such that it's going to require CPC to take an additional vote to endorse the article as it now stands, or are we good with our motions to appropriate as they were?
I believe council will say that your motions are fine. He was just trying to tighten up the article so that there were no issues post town meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Donna?
Yeah, just to Mary's point, I mean, I thought that the application was to help to acquire the parcel in its entirety, not specifically the portions that would be under the care and custody of the select board. So maybe I didn't hear that correctly when you said it, Joe. And then, I mean, I have to assume council's been involved in the creation of the PNS for this property, correct?
I cannot confirm that at this time.
Okay. And so, I mean, did I hear you say that it's being rewritten? I guess I'll have to read it. I mean, the CPC funding was for the entire parcel, right? I mean, am I not remembering that correctly?
Oh, I think you're right, Don.
Okay.
So then, Mr. Chairman, what I would suggest is, I don't know that you'll have time tonight, but you may want to review Article 30 because it speaks to 9 specific deeds and 9 specific properties that the town would be purchasing outright. And I do know that the Mass Division of Conservation and Recreation is looking to purchase at least one additional parcel.
Kathy?
I guess I misunderstood. I thought that the town was purchasing a conservation restriction, not the actual property. Isn't that what was happening?
I don't have that. You're looking for details of an article I don't have in front of me.
No, but that's how it was presented to us.
That's why I thought it was vetted to us. But
Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, I need to.
there has to be a reason why council redid the language.
So I need to correct something very quickly, if I may, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize. I want to read from the explanation because I misspoke. In the explanation, it states, of course, I've just lost my place. Bear with me for a moment here. The following parcels owned by the Jenkins Nominee Trust, 9 deeds would be purchased by the town, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the Harwich Conservation Trust. And then it lists out the nine parcels. So I do apologize for that misinformation on my part. And generally speaking, council's effort, again, as they've confirmed in their narrative to me, was to substantially revise it to authorize the acquisition of the parcels in question, as well as appropriating CPA funds for the purchase. So they wanted to strengthen the argument strengthen the article that allows for the purchase of those parcels and further to use CPA funds to accomplish that.
Would that include the conservation restriction?
I'll go back to it. I don't recall seeing in that particular article a conservation restriction referenced, but I'm going to give it a quick review. Sorry, yes, it does. And to grant a conservation restriction thereon to the Harwich Conservation Trust. It does have that language.
Okay, thank you. Mary?
So I was just going to suggest, David, that if, just looking at the time, that perhaps we should calendar it for our next meeting, which will be before town meeting, And that way, if people have further questions, we can look at it when we actually have time to fully vet it and discuss it.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. Thank you, Mary. Kathy?
I don't know, I'm gonna have to go back to the application, but I really think that the intent was for the town to hold the conservation restriction and for the purchase to be by HCT. So I don't know what's going on with the legalese, but I think it's a little different from what was originally presented. And I don't have my application in front of me, so I'm sorry.
Okay, no, I understand. I'd be looking for that myself. All right. What do we have for time? 20.
I think
So,
we need to vet that out before we go any further with it. That's all, clarification.
okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Anything else from the board? Joe, is there anything else you need to add?
Just very quickly, council also indicated that they revised the sand pond article to more clearly state that the funds would be used for a valid recreational purpose under the CPA Act.
Okay, thank you. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions from the board for now to the town administrator? Okay, Joe, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you all. John's the organizer, so I get to bounce.
Okay,
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
how much more time do we have, John?
None.
Well,
Oh,
it's 6:21, so.
Yeah.
all right, so I'll set it up on the agenda for you, and I'll get the article. Again, I just got it when I get in the door tonight, so I'll forward all that information to the board. You can go through it and discuss it. We'll discuss it at the next meeting. Okay?
Roll
So,
call out.
yes,
Roll call out.
yes, Donna,
David, will we also have the final opinion from legal counsel on the church property on the next agenda?
Donna, we'll probably wind up with that legal opinion the day we walk through town meeting floor.
Okay.
I can't answer that question.
Guys, I promised.
All right,
Okay, fine.
Donna,
I move we adjourn the meeting at 6:22 PM.
Second,
all those in favor, roll call. Donna,
Aye.
Mary,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Elizabeth,
aye.
John,
Aye.
David, aye. We'll see you next time, folks. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, you
Aye.
guys. Bye.
Good to see y'all.